regardless of all the help, all the company, everything around you, you are responsible for yourself. When you're sitting in a room alone between those four walls, you only have yourself. And the conversation you have with yourself can make or break you.
I'm Carol Ofori, and this is the Carol Ofori Podcast for thought-provoking conversations. Self-mastery is the pinnacle of self-effectiveness. It is the reset button that puts you back in control of your life and helps you make healthy choices in both your personal and business life. I took these words from the cover of a book titled Servings of Self-Mastery, written by today's guest on the Carol Ofori Podcast, Dr. Alistair Mokoena. Hi, Dr. Mokoena. Welcome, and thank you for joining me on the Carol Ofori Podcast.
Hey, Carol. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Self-mastery is the pinnacle of self-effectiveness, you say. Explain this.
So I believe in the power of one. I believe that if all of us did work on ourselves, the world would be a better place. Because for us to make an impact in the world, it takes all of us to show up, to introspect and to say, I want to be a net positive contributor.
Yeah.
Now, if all 62 million South Africans made it their business to show up and to be positive and to be constructive and to be helpful to each other, I think the world would be a much, much better place. So when I was thinking about writing this book on self-mastery, it was my little contribution to society to say, all of us have potential inside us to be good. You know, there's a duality to all things. There's dark and there's light. There's good and there's evil. So we always have a choice. And I want to encourage people to start each day with a positive choice. And so self-mastery just says, look at yourself. There's a couple of things you can do right. And the sum total of that is a very positive force in society.
Yeah. We're going to go deep, deep, deep. But I think we can start in the beginning. You speak of duality. You grew up Garankuwa, Mafikeng, come from a home that was very rooted in education. Daddy had a sporting background, playing for a big team like Kaizer Chiefs in the 70s. You speak about this. Let's talk about yourself and how you've found yourself on this journey to becoming a self-master yourself and you're growing up.
I was very fortunate. I think it's important to recognize privilege when you see it. So when you grow up in a family where education is taken seriously, it's supported, it's promoted, you're lucky. When one of your parents is an entrepreneur, I mean, that gives you the confidence to start a business someday. And you learn the lessons. I mean, when my father's first business, which was a shebeen, when I was thinking about it growing up, I mean, it was a bit of a schlep. You working and then it grew into a bottle store. So I saw the business grow. But after school, we work. School holidays, we work. And you did everything. You did sales, you did marketing, you did people issues, you did payroll, you did telemarketing, customers with phone, you dispatch bakkies to go and make deliveries and small drops, you did customer experience. You were basically responsible for everything. Now, if I look back, that's a mini MBA. So I grew up exposed to a mini MBA on the one side. My mum, who's a retired university professor, she's an academic. I used to see her marking and writing. She's co-authored 15 textbooks. Wow. So here I am celebrating one book. Well, my mum has 15 books with her name, on those books. So that encouragement, that reality, that representation for me is the force that actually drives me. It just says it's possible, right? And then having grown up in a township, which, I mean, in the 80s was very bleak. It was 20 k's away from Pretoria CBD. Very stark contrast between a black township versus CBDs and white suburbs. So you would take a taxi into town for shopping, be exposed to a very different world that didn't embrace you, and then you'd take a taxi back into the township, past the industrial sites where the factories employed township workers. And you can see the harsh disparity, right? And then for boarding school, my parents shipped us off to Mafikeng, which was the capital city of Bophuthatswana. Now, it can be a capital city of any country in the world. It's well resourced. You see people like you running big business, running industry, having political power. So I was exposed to this duality. School days, boarding school, I'm in a capital city where black people are running the show. And it gives me confidence and inner belief. And it reminds me that what I'm exposed to in Pretoria is unnatural and not right. So when I'm in Pretoria and I'm experienced to racism and separate existence, separate development, but when you go back to school, you're in a normal society that's integrated in a multiracial, multicultural, multilingual school, which is Mabatu High School, where every religion, every race, every language was given prominence. We had a different religion for every day of assembly. So that just says to you, you are equal to anybody in the world and you can flourish anywhere you go. So that ingrained a self-belief in me, and I have a responsibility to gift it to other people. I have to tell people it's possible. You can do anything. I mean, I'm 47 now. I'm running Google in Southern Africa. I'm a professor at business schools. I'm living my best life. and I have to be honest about the privilege I've had to arrive here, and I need to instill that self-belief in other people.
Yeah. And I love that because you do talk about how you started off, your family, your dad, entrepreneurial. You speak in the book about being a young entrepreneur yourself, how you started several little businesses, and from that you've just catapulted. How important is starting, a small business or some sort of, you speak of side hustles later on in the book as well. How important is that to crafting your own self-mastery, the idea of entrepreneurship? You speak a lot about it in the book.
This book, right? My kids, my family were involved in me writing the book. We have an open plan house. I wrote quite a bit of it sitting at the dining room table. And I wanted my kids to be exposed to an idea turning into a product and turning into a business. So, Daddy, what are you doing? I'm writing a book. What is it about? And we debate the title. They keep me honest on the page count and word count and all of that. The book is now done. It's launched. They're at the launch. The book is now selling. I mean, in a month, we've sold close to 2,000 copies. Wow. The book is number 50 in the country. And they can see the orders. They can see the distribution. They can see the sales. Now, what's important about starting a little entrepreneurial venture or a business, it's not about the business itself. It's the underlying principle of I can create something out of nothing. I can monetize it. And if it's meant as a gift to the world that addresses a particular need or carries an important message, the world will galvanize around you and support you. Now, that's the principle, right? Businesses come and go. Some fail, some succeed. But the motivation behind a business has to be about serving a higher purpose, gifting the world something that you have birthed and given, life into. And when that thing gets embraced and supported, I think there's magic there. So I've had a couple of businesses along the way. In boarding school, we had a sneaker washing business. I see now that there's sneaker washing shops in malls. Well, we did it when we were teenagers. Yeah. I got to university. I realized there was a gap in the entertainment landscape. There went, many clubs playing kwaito, house and rap and all of that. My friends and I formed a little events company, and we threw parties in Grahamstown when we were studying at Rhodes. And that became a business that sustained us and, gave us pocket money. And, when I took a break from corporate, I had a strategy consulting business, helping, brands and companies and marketing departments and advertising agencies with brand positioning and brand strategy. And even that was great. And at some point, I started a little business out of my photography hobby. And, I printed on canvas. Way before there were little kiosks in malls doing canvas prints, I was doing canvas prints. I was doing T-shirts. I had a greeting cards range based on photos I took around the world. Now, all that is experience and training for you to run big corporates. Because again, it's coming up with an idea in response to a gap in the market, building a proposition around it, building a product around it, monetizing it, and watching people enjoy the gift that you're giving them.
Now, you went from a marketing specialist to general management roles, and you speak about how that's important to aiding you on your journey to mastering. Can you talk about that segue and how it does help in one wanting to get to that pinnacle?
So I remember when I started working at Unilever here in Durban in 1998, our marketing director, Tom Allchurch, said to us, some of you are going to be marketing specialists, i.e. you will retire as a marketing director. Some of you are going to be generalists. You'll be general managers, MDs and CEOs. Don't try and figure that out yet. Just work hard, learn, embrace every opportunity, and the future will guide you and you will see where you kind of net out. And I put up my hand and I said, how do you know when it's time to, choose one or the other? And I remember he said to me, the moment will tell you. Read the moment. And the minute you start having generalist ideas, when you are a specialist, you know that it's time to move. So I was heading up marketing teams. I was head of marketing at Cadbury, head of marketing at Absa Bank, working on retail and business bank. But I started having generalist ideas about how to run a business and thinking I want my impact to be felt beyond just marketing. And I also wanted to be involved in different industries because my life purpose is to make a difference in people's lives. And I want as broad a canvas as possible to be able to do that. If you decide that your life is about significance and impact, well, you go after the biggest challenges in society. You want to improve lives. You make a sacrifice out of yourself. You go and give talks. You give lectures to help people. You write books because you want to help. You want to be this vector, this channel, this conduit that connects people between opportunity and need. So I knew that I had to get into a generalist role. So I went from heading up marketing departments into running advertising agencies. I ran FCB Johannesburg, I ran Ogilvy Johannesburg, eventually became CEO of Ogilvy South Africa. And there I was exposed to 50 to 100 different companies, different industries. And just the stimulation and being able to solve problems and help businesses succeed and being like a purveyor of hope, because through marketing and advertising, we want to lift moods and feelings, and and I think that for me has been a massive privilege. And what I'm trying to do with the book is say to people, you too can achieve the ultimate goals that you set for yourself. You too can be a positive force to other people. You too can master yourself. And self-mastery, very simply, is putting the word self before every virtue. Self-love, you can't love others if you don't love yourself. Self-care, very important. Well-being is super important. Self-forgiveness, before you can be expected to forgive other people, learn to forgive yourself. Self-regulation, how do you learn to become patient? How do you resist temptation to want instant gratification always? Because timing is as important as the dream itself. Sometimes, opportunities don't materialize because the timing is wrong, or something glares you in the face, but you fail spectacularly because the timing wasn't right. So knowing when to enter the stage and when to leave the stage is important. And also knowing when to leave the dance floor and go to the balcony so you can have an aerial view of what's happening is super important.
I love it. It's like you've gone so deep in already, and I'm still like, wait. I want to get into like academics now, right? One thing you speak about is how important education is to mastering self. You're well educated, your family, as you mentioned, but how important is it for young people to have a good education on a journey to self-mastery? Because in today's times, a lot of people will say that formal education in some spaces doesn't really aid you in getting anywhere. We'll talk later about how you say your CV is only half the situation, your actual experiences and everything is the real talk. But I want to talk about the importance of education and the weight we put on formalized education. Is it really relevant in 2024 in self-mastery, or is there a bigger spectrum? Is there more an experience that you have to have?
So when we talk about the notion of being a student of life and a student for life, there's two aspects. One is observing what's around you and being a sponge and observing without judgment, which is really important. Learning from other people, especially when it comes to notions like mentorship and coaching and so on. A lot of people obsess over having a relationship with a mentor or a coach. You can learn from people from a distance. I have people that are not even aware that they mentor me. Just by living their lives and doing what they do, I learn so much. I draw lessons from that. So that's free education. There's also a lot of free online sources of learning. Reading is a source of education. If you read this book and you learn one or two things, that's education, right? And then a student for life is now formalized education, where you can either sign up for a course or you can just buy books on topics you're interested in and really getting yourself into the zone of being a student. And they say sometimes you're not ready for the moment, right? So when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And the teacher does not have to be a formal teacher or lecturer. It could be anybody around you, in your community, in your tribe. So I think it's important to have a spirit of humility and say, I'm not too old to learn. My parents always said to me, in a Setswana expression that says, Tuto haikholelwe, you're never too old to learn. So humble yourself and you'll be exalted. And I think that speaks volume when it comes to the need to just absorb what's around you, because there's always room to improve, right?
Yeah, there's always room to improve. Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses. You speak about it in the book and how it works towards, mastering self, understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses. Can you unpack that from the servings of self-mastery perspective?
So I did, there's all these personality tests, character tests, value tests. So I did Gallup Strength Finder, and I learned through that whole exercise that our understanding of strength and weaknesses is actually wrong. It's erroneous. There's three things. There's strengths, there's weaknesses, there's development areas.
Okay.
Now, strengths are the things you enjoy doing, the things you love. That's important because those things give you energy.
Gotcha.
When you give someone a task that speaks to their strengths, plays with their strengths, the excitement, the motivation, the inner drive to achieve it is there. It's palpable. You don't need to follow them around.
Good.
Same applies to us. The things we love doing, those are our strengths. Weaknesses, on the other hand, are not the things you're bad at. They are the things you hate doing. The things you don't the things that sap your energy. The things you postpone until the very last minute because you have to do them because your job requires you to do them. It's like when you're a strategist, you might not enjoy project management and execution and operational detail.
Right.
But if your job requires you to excel at both, you will have to do both to be effective. But there's some that you like, some that you don't like. Your development areas, on the other hand, are the things you need to be good at, but you're not. That's where you need to go and get training, to get coaching, to study further. So I think that distinction between what are strengths, what are weaknesses, we just need to relearn that.
Yeah.
Weaknesses are things that sap your energy. So the idea with weaknesses is minimize the number of weaknesses in your day, in your life. Outsource weaknesses. Partner with somebody who loves those things. There are people who love the things you hate.
Got you. That's so powerful. Never ever viewed that in that light, ever. it's always been that strengths is what I'm good at, weaknesses is things I'm not so good at, but I need to be able to do those things. So that really does aha moment, as you mentioned in the book there as well. Let's talk about energy management. You talk about how this is so important in mastering self. You have to have an ability to, master your energy.
Yeah. So before our talk today, I went on a 10K walk. Now, that was me investing in physical energy to release those endorphins, to get those happiness hormones going, whether it's serotonin and so on. That's you managing your physical side because it's got psychological impact on you. So rewiring, resetting your body through exercise is super, super important. Generating those happy hormones is a fuel you need to get through a day. Spiritual energy is super important. I'm a Christian. I'm a born-again Christian. I believe that all of this is attributed to God. It's God's grace that I'm here doing what I'm doing and living the best life that I ever imagined I could ever live. It's because of His grace and His mercy. So I'm very clear about where my spiritual energy comes from. And that's why a mission is important. Like, I love Google's mission, which is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and helpful to society. I'm drawn to that mission because my own personal mission is to make a difference in people's lives. So if you're managing me or leading me, you need to understand my value set and my mission. That's how you will appeal to my spiritual energy. Psychological energy is important. Stimulate me mentally. Know the tasks that excite me. Know my strengths. Help me play to my strengths by allocating me tasks that speak to that, right? Emotional energy. Read the signs. Spoken, unspoken, verbal, non-verbal language. Be in sync with how I'm feeling. Ask me how I'm feeling. So our responsibility is to manage our own energies because we give up vibes to other people.
Yeah.
But also, if we're in a place of leadership or management, we have a responsibility to help manage people's energies so that collectively we're net positive contributors. We exude positive energy.
Yeah, that's quite profound. You talk about life's purpose, which I think many of us in our careers and in our lives, we are consistently chasing our purpose. You mention in the book, it's your North Star. Can you elaborate that for us?
So I've read quite a few different books about life purpose and people come at it from different angles, but it all sends you in the right direction. I think possibly the easiest place to go to for your life purpose is your maker. So if you say to God in your moment of reflection, meditation, prayer, what purpose do you have for me? Why am I here? What role do you want me to play in society? What is pleasing to you? And you will find your answer. And if you want to do the self-work and say, when am I in a state of flow? When am I performing optimally? What makes me happy? Let me do some 360-degree research with my tribe and ask people, what do you think I'm good at? Why do you think I exist? What value do I add to your life? What do you say about me when I'm not in the room? What word would you associate with me? What is my value proposition? What is the space that I fill in society? If we think of ourselves as brands, right?
Yeah.
In the world of brands all exist to fulfill a particular need, whether it's a functional / physiological need or emotional need. But a brand has to fulfill a particular need for consumers and customers and users to buy it.
Yeah.
But that brand must be distinctive and differentiated from the next brand.
Yeah.
So your proposition has to be uniquely crafted. So I say in the book, we must all teach ourselves brand management principles so that you know how to curate your own character, your own identity, even your own archetype, so that people, when they think about Carol, one word comes up and that word must be distinctive, ownable by you and true to you. So I think that is how we try and shape our life purpose and say, if I were to die today, what would I want people to say about me? What legacy do I want to live? What is my contribution to history?
What is my contribution to history? You talk about trust and how trust unlocks mastery. Can you explain that? I mean, for some people will think trust with regards to mastery is that be you trusting yourself and your ability to do something. Is it who you put trust in? How does this plug in?
So I think that, human beings have two predominant mindsets. You can either be playing to win mindset or your mindset could be avoiding losing. Now, playing to win is a positive disposition to life. The world is my oyster. The world is a place full of abundance. There's enough for all of us.
Okay.
I trust the universe to conspire with me to help me succeed. I trust people have good intentions.
Okay.
I trust that nobody's out to get me.
Gotcha.
So I'm not suspicious of people's intent. I assume positive intent. That's playing to win. The opposite of that coin is avoiding losing mode. Risk mitigation, putting out fires, fearful, suspicious of intent and motive. The world is defined by scarcity. There isn't enough for all of us. And my win is your loss. Right. So it's quite adversarial as opposed to collaborative. So I think trust is what sets those two worlds apart. So you either give 100% trust to everybody and it's up to them to go down to zero, or you start from a position of zero trust and everybody must prove themselves to you.
Okay, so how do you navigate it? Are you saying that you need to choose your position? You're either going to go in full trust or you're going to go in being paranoid, or how do you navigate this?
So for me, what makes me happy is when I trust people. What makes me happy is when I see the world as full of abundance and playing to win, as opposed to avoiding losing. I don't want to carry negative energy. I don't want to be suspicious of people. I'm not saying I'm naive. You know, I my eyes are wide open, but I start from a position of trust. And I give, because I feel that giving, it is in giving that we receive. And I say in the book, giving makes you lucky, because you are exuding positive energy and you're kind and generous. I honestly don't think that we should worry about being taken for granted, as long as you're clear about boundaries. You know, generosity does not have to be a weakness. If people abuse your generosity and you pick it up, you put a stop to it. But to withhold generosity because you fear being taken advantage of, I think is a suboptimal existence.
That's profound. That's profound. I've never viewed generosity with that in mind. Let's go into the CV. You have a chapter on that. You say the CV is half the story, tell the whole story. And, in 2024, we have a challenge in South Africa with, employment, especially young people. They're coming out with these very colorful degrees and are struggling to make it in finding work and finding opportunities. How do you speak to a young person trying to master the art of just getting through the door with an employer?
Young people are very lucky today that there's something called LinkedIn. I mean, with the internet, you can research anything and everyone, any role, any job, any company, any profession, and you can do thorough research and build a fact base on what's required in this role. And with social media, you can hit anybody up and ask them questions. 1 out of 10 might respond. It's feedback, right? So you're able to research and build a typical profile of a bank manager or of a CA or of a company director. And you can reach out to people on LinkedIn and make contact. And some of them might be open to having a conversation with you. So you are able to build profiles. And then you can work back and say, and I'm not saying any two life journeys are the same. They're not. Even if you do the same degrees as me, you might not, and work in the same company as me, you might not end up in the same position. But you can learn from people and say, typical building blocks are the following degrees, that diploma, that qualification, this and that, this experience. And then I say, that's the formal stuff. The informal stuff, remember, be a student of life, student for life. The informal stuff, what skills have you acquired? What skills do you have an opportunity to nurture? Take December holidays. How many of us have big family gatherings, a big celebration over a day or 2 or 3? Quite a few of us. What is the organization work that happens to make that event a success? Who's inviting everyone? Who's coordinating? Who's doing project management? Who's doing event management? Who's doing customer service? Who's serving? If you want to get into the hospitality business, start by volunteering for family events and functions. So if there's a big wedding, there's a big coming of age celebration, if you want to get into, beauty and makeup, be a makeup artist and all of that, start with the family. Get training, get experience, build a portfolio of work with the opportunities you have every day. Take pictures and videos of the makeup you've just done for your cousin who's getting married. That's your portfolio. That's your body of evidence, right? If you want to get into project management, manage projects in your life and capture that as part of your CV. Volunteering for NGOs, volunteering for committees in church or wherever you are, you have an opportunity to develop skills and talk about those. I talk about the people in the book in chapter 1, the people that I grew up around, how they influenced me. That's a very important part of an interview conversation.
I don't think young people think about that when they're going to an interview. It's always that a dreaded question. Tell us about yourself. And then you literally are like, which toe should I blow off first? The big toe, the baby toe? Because, wow, this is the worst question. But now you're saying that's an opportunity to sell yourself.
I think it's super important. I mean, I was lucky growing up in Garankuwa, the famous people like Tim Modise, veteran broadcaster who was in the community, accessible. Representation is important.
Yeah.
And how those people build self-belief in me and many other people. When I was growing up in Mabatu and Mafikeng, I saw cabinet ministers, I saw vice chancellors, I saw judges, I saw business executives who looked like me. I remember visiting my friend at his home. His father was vice chancellor of University of Botswana, and this guy had a desktop in his bedroom, and we were 12. That was unheard of at the time, right? But that example showed me that it's possible and that I also deserve it. And if I do some work, that's the result,
Yeah.
So that art of the possible, I think it's something that we all deserve to be familiar with.
We live in a time now where we talk a lot about mental health. And in the book, you talk about having control and the importance of having control of the voices in our head. Because we know that the voices in our head sometimes can lead us astray, but sometimes they are the beacon, they are the lighthouse, they are the ones showing us the way. Can you talk to us about the importance of having those voices under control, especially in light of the world we live in today?
Regardless of all the help, all the company, or everything around you, you are responsible for yourself. When you're sitting in a room alone between those four walls, you only have yourself. And the conversation you have with yourself can make or break you. So we have a choice. We have all these voices. We've got a judge that judges you. You're terrible, you're useless. You've got a critic, or you'll never amount to anything. You've got a pessimist, or the future is bleak. You're going to lose that job. Your boss doesn't rate you. Nobody wants to be your friend. We're all familiar with those voices.
Yeah.
Then there's the optimist voice, which is a voice of hope that often gets drowned out. Now, what I'm saying in the book is become a maestro, become a conductor of a choir. Understand that there's a choir of voices playing in your head. Recognize those voices and deal with those voices. And let the optimist bubble up to the top so that you can lift yourself out of a dark space and negative space into a place where you have energy to go forward and actually, reach your goal. So that's a daily exercise, hourly, every minute. You have a choice. There's all these conflicting voices. Insecurity happens all the time. Imposter syndrome. I think I'm going to fail. I'm not good enough. That's a daily reality, I'm going to be found out. So learning to understand triggers, what triggers you, what sends you into that negative space, protecting yourself from those triggers, being able to launder your emotions out of those triggers really, really matters. And also, very importantly, mental wellness is something we have to guard against. There's a very fine line between, being well and unwell. And that's why neurodiversity is so important. And when I wrote this book, I was thinking about small bite-sized chunks. I didn't want to have long chapters where people get lost. I want people to feel a sense of accomplishment when they've finished a chapter. Some people only have 5 minutes concentration. So out of respect for those people, get to the point. There's just no joy in reading a repetitive tautologist book where you feel the point could have been made in the first chapter. Why am I on chapter 4 reading the same thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You speak about don't be seduced by perfection. You have voices, and voices will tell you perfect is the only way. And you say don't be seduced by perfection, and how that can really throw you off on your journey to self-mastery. Let's go into that a little bit.
Perfection is a mirage. It's not achievable to human beings. Only God is perfect. That's not attainable. And I made the mistake for many, many years in my life of pursuing perfection, thinking, it's the holy grail of success. I need to be perfect. What that does is you don't cut yourself slack. You don't forgive yourself. You don't allow yourself to experiment. You're intolerant of failure because you want everything to be perfect. And you become controlling because people will take away from the perfect picture that you have. If you want straight lines and someone introduces something curvy, that's disturbing your peace and your pursuit of perfection. Now you start being controlling, and then you realize, oh my goodness, I'm not happy. I'm never happy. That's when coaching came in, and I saw the light, and I realized, actually, no, don't go for perfection. It's like pursuing balance, work-life balance. Balance implies 50-50. No, it's about work-life alignment. If everything that you do, if all your activities are aligned to your life purpose, those activities will give you energy. You can spend 80% of your day doing activities, 20% resting, but you're happy and you have contentment because there's alignment there. Balance is seeking something that I think is quite misleading, and that's why I say perfection is the biggest way to fail. You will never taste happiness if you pursue perfection. It's not accessible to us.
Sure. Okay. Wow, I'm taking in so many notes. Let's go into spirituality. You touched on it. We spoke about it earlier. You say your identity comes from your spirituality. It is the core of who you are. It is your life's purpose, and it's your center. Now, how would you elaborate this for someone, for example, who might not be religious? How do you center yourself? As a Christian, I 100% understand when you say your center comes from, your God calling and speaking to God and in that situation. But someone who's not from that religious spectrum or realm, how would you say you find yourself?
I find that the Bible is a very useful and interesting book, and if you're Muslim, the Quran is that for you, right? And you can read the Bible like you read any other book, and if you're not a Christian, you can remove the verses and all of that and just take the principle. The big verse that led me to write in this book was Luke 12 verse 48, to whom much is given, much is expected. I felt that there's a responsibility that comes with the privilege that I've had. I've had the opportunity of doing some really amazing jobs, being exposed to really amazing people, learning really amazing skills.
Yeah.
And I felt the need to share that with people. I acquire and accumulate knowledge with the sole purpose of sharing it to help people. You can see that as a biblical principle or not. It's just a life principle. So it doesn't matter where you draw your sense of identity from. I'm not going to impose it on anybody. But what works for you is something that talks to your life purpose and your vision of your life, right? So those principles matter a lot. But I think just being intentional about how do you want to live your life?
Yeah.
What should my day look like? Where do I get happiness from? What are the things that take away my happiness and joy? Let me remove those things. Who are the people that are toxic and bring negative energy into my space? Let me launder my tribe, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to end up with people that actually serve you. And selecting your own board of directors, having your own kitchen cabinet. I speak in the book about have a wingmate, have a Sherpa, have somebody who guides you, who believes in you, who challenges you, who will just tell you what you want to hear, who will give you constructive feedback, who will hold up a mirror and say, Carol, la uya bais. Try something else, try a different approach. That's what you need, right?
Celebrate your wins. You say you've got to count your chickens before they hatch.
Definitely before they hatch.
A lot of people say don't count your chickens before they hatch because you jinx stuff.
Celebrate
You
every
say no.
milestone, Carol.
Talk to me.
Celebrate every milestone. I watch sports coaches who do not show any emotions with the first goal. They still have like this straight face, this poke. I'm like, when is this coach going to celebrate?
Right.
Celebrate like you've won the World Cup.
Yeah.
And they almost like want to wait until the final whistle. And no, I don't believe in that. You need positive energy and motivation to sustain you. You might not finish the race.
Sure.
You might tomorrow might not come. And where do you get your energy to carry on? When you're leading a team, you must motivate them. You must look for many moments in a day of saying, well done, great job, keep at it. I love where this is going. It's trending in the right direction. There's a need for that. So if you want to master yourself, take care of yourself, motivate yourself, push yourself, tell yourself positive stuff. Neuro-linguistic programming exists for a reason. Paint a picture of success and let that be the guiding force. Let that be, this lighthouse that draws you in. Focus, keep your eye on the prize. But you have a responsibility to keep yourself going. No one else will do it for you unless you have a hype man that you pay who keeps saying, Carol, keep going, keep at it. But I think it's important.
Yeah, it's so important. And as we get into the end of our conversation, you mentioned that you wrote this book because so many people want you to mentor them. So many people want a minute of your day. You're like, yeah, take the book now, leave me alone. And you speak about the importance of mentoring, and you're an advocate for mentoring. And you mentioned in the book how I've always seen mentoring as taking my time. Like, oh my gosh, I've got so many things to do. You guys go find your lives. Talk to us about mentoring, the importance of it in your own self-mastery.
So I find it fulfilling to see the impact that I can have on somebody. Sometimes all that people want is one conversation with you. That's all. It might be the key that unlocks, something they've been struggling with. It might be the sword that cuts the Gordian knot. So just opening yourself up to that conversation, I think, is important. Knowing that people have access to you, and you can be clear about boundaries, when to access, when not to access. But representation is important. A sounding board is important. And we learn so much just by dealing with someone's situation, because you have to draw on your own principles. It's problem solving. And there's also this temptation sometimes as an achiever or as a leader to think that people expect answers out of you.
Yeah.
No, people come to you not necessarily for fish. They come for a fishing rod. If you give them fish, they will bother you every day and say, more fish, more fish, more fish, right? But if you give them a fishing rod and you teach them how to fish, you set them off for a future of independence. You've given them problem-solving skills. So I really enjoy that. I learn a lot. And I'm building a tribe. And maybe those people that I mentor are the ones that are buying the book. So you're creating future customers,
there
right?
You go.
Giving makes you lucky.
Giving makes you lucky. And the last point before we wrap it up is keep your friends close and your enemies closer. You quote some too there with regards to that quote. And, in life, we kind of know this.
Yeah.
But when you think about your efforts as an individual to your self-mastering of self, you don't really think how important this statement is. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah. So I think that book, The Art of War, is brilliant. It's still relevant today. Obviously based in a military setting, but it applies to life, right? So when I say enemies, I mean competitors, detractors, people on the opposite side. They have feedback for you. Treat your enemies with respect, not with contempt. Treat your competitors with respect, not with contempt. Your competitors are doing something that the consumers and the users and the customers love, and they're giving a nod to, and that's why they're supporting them. Understand what it is that's great about your competitor products. Understand how they came up with their strategy. Assume that they're smart and learn from them and be better than them. So outsmart them by learning from them. That's what I mean by keep them close, you understand them. But also people that don't like you or don't have anything positive or interesting to say about you or don't support you, understand what it is that got them to that point. And I'm not saying be a populist. I'm not saying go around turning everybody into a fan. But understand how people view you and why they do, and just make choices about how you deal with that information. It might be that you've got a blind spot. It might be that you actually offend people, but you're not aware. It might be that you come across as arrogant. Meanwhile, you're just a confident person who shares what you know. It might be that your success feels not inclusive, and you've put yourself on a pedestal. So just understanding positive and negative vibes, I think, is quite helpful and useful. Not everybody will like you. Not everybody will celebrate you. But I think it's worthwhile understanding what drives perceptions, because perception is reality.
Perception is reality. My final question. Servings of Self-Mastery is the name of your book. Bite-sized pep talks to unlock greatness. We're sitting at a bar, chatting, and I'm like, Dr. Alistair Mokoena, give me 5 things that I can take home right now to master self.
Okay, the first thing is self-love, self-care, self-forgiveness, self-regulation, self-control, self-awareness. All the selves. That's super important. The second one is there's enough for all of us. We live in a world where we can have abundance. 10 million South Africans go to bed hungry every year, yet 10 million tons of food goes to waste. We need to connect the excess food and the hungry mouths. The third thing is slow and steady wins the race. Do not rush. Horses for courses. Stick to your lane. The fourth thing is, it is in giving that we receive. Give, give, give. Have a giving heart. Be generous. Be kind. You will draw more people towards you. And the last one is have a wingmate. Have somebody supporting you. Have someone that you can sense check with. Someone who can give you criticism, give you constructive feedback. Someone who can keep you in check. Somebody who will celebrate you.
I love it. Dr. Alistair Mokoena, Servings of Self-Mastery, Bite-Sized Pep Talks to Unlock Your Greatness. Your book is amazing. It's been such an insightful conversation. I think it's a great way to unlock 2024 and begin with self. So many things we just kind of skim over in life, and you've painted a different perspective that can allow us to take a little bit more ownership and a little bit more direction in what we're trying to do in life. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Carol. This was amazing.
That's the Carol Ofori Podcast. For thought-provoking conversations, listen at ecr.co.za under podcasts or your favorite podcast app.